Have you ever had 10 seconds destroy your entire future? Emily Carter thought that was exactly what had just happened. The crowded lobby of Blackwell Global buzzed with the usual Monday morning energy. Executives hurried toward elevators. Assistants balanced tablets and coffee cups. Security guards greeted employees by name. Everything looked normal. Everything felt routine. Until Emily rushed through the revolving doors carrying a large coffee she barely had time to buy. Her heart pounded. She was already 15 minutes late. A flat tire on the freeway had ruined her morning. A missed call from her mother sat unanswered on her phone. Rent was due in 3 days. The last thing she needed was another problem. She never saw the man stepping out of the elevator. 1 second she was checking the time. The next, her shoulder collided with someone solid. The coffee flew from her hand. Gasps echoed through the lobby. Hot coffee splashed across a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her monthly paycheck. Silence followed. The kind of silence that makes every heartbeat sound louder. Emily froze. Her stomach dropped. She slowly looked up and immediately wished she hadn't. Standing in front of her was Ethan Blackwell, Billionaire founder, CEO, and the most powerful person in the company. She had only seen him from a distance before. Now he stood less than 3 feet away, staring at the stains spreading across his jacket. Around them, dozens of employees stopped moving. Nobody looked away. Nobody said a word. Emily felt every eye in the building focused on her. "I'm so sorry," she blurted out. Her voice shook. "I didn't see you. This was completely my fault." She reached for napkins from a nearby desk, nearly dropping them too. Her hands trembled as she tried to clean the mess. The lobby remained painfully quiet. Several employees exchanged looks. One receptionist actually covered her mouth in shock. Everyone seemed to be waiting for the same thing. The apology. The reprimand. Maybe even termination on the spot. Ethan glanced at the coffee stain. Then he looked at Emily. Seconds passed. They felt like hours. She could barely breathe. "You're late," he finally said. Emily nodded miserably. "Yes, sir." Another pause followed. Then something unexpected happened. The corners of Ethan's mouth lifted slightly. Not a laugh. Not even a full smile. Just enough to confuse everyone watching. "You should probably get upstairs before your manager notices," he said calmly. Emily blinked. Had she heard that correctly? No lecture. No anger. No threat. Ethan adjusted his jacket and walked toward the elevators as if nothing unusual had happened. The crowd remained frozen. Confused whispers immediately spread through the lobby. Emily stood there speechless, trying to understand what had just happened. She thought the nightmare was over. She thought she had somehow escaped disaster. What she didn't know was that the billionaire CEO had already noticed something about her that morning. Something nobody else in the company had ever seen. Some smiles are harder to understand than anger. Emily spent the rest of the day replaying that moment in her head. Every time she answered a phone call, scheduled a meeting, or greeted a visitor, she saw Ethan Blackwell's calm expression standing in the middle of the lobby. It made no sense. By lunchtime, the story had spread across 3 floors. Employees whispered when she walked past. A few stared openly. Others looked almost disappointed that she had not been fired. Her manager, Richard Collins, called her into his office shortly after 2 o'clock. Emily expected the worst. Richard folded his hands across his desk and studied her carefully. "Tell me exactly what happened this morning." She explained everything. The collision, the coffee, the apology, the strange reaction. Richard listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "You are very lucky," he said quietly. Emily forced a smile, though she did not feel lucky at all. The conversation ended quickly, yet something about his expression bothered her. He seemed nervous. Not angry. Nervous. As the afternoon continued, unusual things began happening. A senior executive she had never met stopped by the front desk and asked her opinion about a client scheduling issue. An hour later, someone from the finance department called requesting information about a project she had helped coordinate months ago. Questions came from every direction. Small questions. Harmless questions. Still, they felt connected somehow. Emily returned home exhausted. Her apartment was small, barely 600 square feet, but it was hers. She kicked off her shoes and checked her voicemail. Relief washed over her when she heard her mother's voice sounding healthy and cheerful. For the first time all day, Emily smiled. Maybe tomorrow would finally feel normal again. It did not. The next morning, she arrived early. She wanted no chance of another disaster. The lobby remained quiet until shortly after 9 o'clock when a message appeared in her inbox. Her stomach tightened instantly. The sender was the executive office. The subject line contained only 6 words. Meeting request. Executive conference room. 10 a.m. Emily read it 3 times. There had to be some mistake. Receptionists did not attend meetings in executive conference rooms. Certainly not meetings requested by the executive office itself. She checked the recipient list. Only her name appeared. A cold feeling settled into her chest. Around 10 minutes later, another employee noticed her expression. "Are you okay?" he asked. Emily turned her monitor slightly. His eyes widened. "That room is on the top floor." The words did not help. By 9:55, her hands felt just as unsteady as they had in the lobby. She stepped into the elevator alone. Floor numbers climbed one by one. 20, 25, 30. The doors finally opened onto the executive level. Thick carpet muted every footstep. Glass walls overlooked the city skyline. At the end of the hallway stood a conference room with its doors already open. Emily took a slow breath and walked forward. Then she stopped. Sitting at the far end of the table was Ethan Blackwell himself, waiting for her. Emily stood frozen near the doorway. The conference room was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Sunlight reflected off polished glass surfaces. At the far end of the table sat Ethan Blackwell, reviewing a folder. He looked up as she entered. "Ms. Carter," he said calmly, "please have a seat." Emily obeyed, trying not to reveal how nervous she felt. The chair seemed far too expensive for someone in her position. Ethan closed the folder and studied her for a moment. The silence stretched long enough to make her uncomfortable. "Do you know why you are here?" he asked. Emily swallowed. "Honestly, no, sir." A faint smile appeared. "Good. That means nobody has been talking." The answer only confused her more. Ethan opened the folder again. To her surprise, she saw her own name printed across several pages. Performance reports, internal emails, project summaries. Her heart skipped a beat. "Sir, I do not understand." "You will." He slid a document across the table. Emily looked down. It contained notes from a client event she had helped coordinate 6 months earlier. "Do you remember this?" he asked. "Yes." The event succeeded because of a scheduling adjustment made at the last minute. Emily nodded. "That was necessary. There was a conflict with the venue." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "The official report credits your supervisor." Emily blinked. "I know. Who actually solved the problem?" Emily hesitated. "I did." Ethan said nothing. He simply turned another page. Then another. Every example followed the same pattern. A delayed shipment. A client complaint. A software issue. Time after time, Emily recognized situations she had quietly helped resolve. Yet someone else had received recognition. Her confusion slowly turned into disbelief. Why had the chief executive officer spent time reviewing any of this? Ethan finally closed the folder. "Do you know how many employees work for this company?" Emily shook her head. "Nearly 12,000, he said. "Most people believe I only pay attention to executives. That assumption is usually wrong." Emily sat speechless. Ethan rose from his chair and walked toward the window. "Talent is easy to find," he said. "Character is much harder." He looked out across the skyline. "The morning in the lobby told me more about you than you realize." Emily remembered the coffee, the embarrassment, the panic. Her face warmed instantly. "That was the worst moment of my year." "Perhaps," Ethan replied. "Yet you accepted responsibility immediately. No excuses, no blame, no attempt to escape." He turned back toward her. "That matters." Before Emily could respond, the conference room door opened. A woman in an elegant navy suit entered carrying a tablet. Her sharp eyes moved from Ethan to Emily. The expression on her face revealed immediate disapproval. "Mr. Blackwell," she said, "the board meeting begins in 15 minutes. Ethan nodded. "Thank you, Victoria." The woman glanced at Emily again before leaving. The room felt colder after she disappeared. Ethan returned to his seat. Then he pushed one final document across the table. Emily looked down. Her breath caught. It was not a performance review. It was a promotion offer. And the title printed at the top was far beyond anything she had ever imagined. For several seconds, Emily could not speak. She stared at the promotion letter as if the words might suddenly disappear. The title printed at the top belonged to a junior operations manager, a position that normally required years of experience and multiple recommendations from senior leadership. Her pulse raced. "There must be a mistake," she finally said. Ethan remained calm. "There is no mistake." Emily looked at the salary listed near the bottom of the page. It was nearly double what she currently earned. The number alone felt unreal. "Sir, I am not qualified for this." Ethan folded his hands. "That is interesting." Emily looked up. "Why?" "Because every report I reviewed suggested the opposite." She had no answer. Part of her wanted to believe him. Another part feared she was walking into a situation she could not control. Ethan stood and walked toward the door. "Take 24 hours to consider it. I do not expect an answer today." Emily carefully gathered the documents. Her mind felt completely overwhelmed. As she stepped back into the executive hallway, she noticed someone standing several yards away. Victoria Hayes, the woman from earlier. The executive's sharp expression had not softened. If anything, it looked colder now. Victoria approached slowly. "Congratulations," she said. The words sounded polite. Her tone did not. Emily offered an awkward smile. "Thank you." Victoria glanced at the folder in Emily's hands. "Opportunities at this company are earned." The statement hung in the air. "I understand," Emily replied. Victoria's gaze lingered for another moment. Then she walked away without another word. Emily watched her disappear around the corner. Something about the exchange left her uneasy. The following morning, after a sleepless night filled with doubt and questions, Emily accepted the promotion. By lunchtime, the announcement reached the entire company. Reactions arrived almost instantly. Some employees congratulated her sincerely. Others appeared shocked. A few barely concealed their frustration. Conversations stopped whenever she entered a room. People who had never spoken to her suddenly seemed interested in her career. Rumors spread faster than facts. One employee claimed she had a personal connection to Ethan Blackwell. Another insisted the promotion was part of a secret executive initiative. By the end of the day, the stories had become more ridiculous than believable. Emily tried to ignore them. She focused on learning her new responsibilities. Unfortunately, someone else seemed determined not to let her settle in. Every meeting became a challenge. Every proposal faced unusual scrutiny. Every small mistake received immediate attention. The source was impossible to miss. Victoria Hayes. As Chief Operating Officer, she possessed enormous influence throughout the organization. During meetings, she questioned Emily's recommendations more aggressively than anyone else. She requested additional reports, additional reviews, additional approvals. Nothing was ever simple. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult meeting, Emily gathered her notes and headed toward the elevator. She felt exhausted. Before the doors closed, she heard someone call her name. Ethan stepped inside. The elevator began descending. Silence filled the space for several floors. Then Ethan spoke. "How are you adjusting?" Emily hesitated. "Honestly, it has been harder than I expected." Ethan nodded as if he already knew. "Some people resist change." Emily considered mentioning Victoria but stopped herself. Ethan glanced toward her. "You do not need everyone to believe in you." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. "You only need the truth to be stronger than the rumors." Emily watched him walk away. She wanted to believe those words. She truly did. What she did not know was that Victoria Hayes had already started planning something far more dangerous than office gossip. The pressure continued building over the next several weeks. Emily worked longer hours than ever before. She arrived before sunrise. Many nights, she left after most of the lights in the building had gone dark. No matter how hard she worked, Victoria always seemed to be waiting with another question, another criticism, another reason why Emily supposedly did not belong in her new role. What Emily did not know was that events were unfolding far beyond her view. Late one evening, Ethan sat alone in his office reviewing a collection of internal reports. The thick file on his desk had been growing for months. Long before the promotion, long before the accident in the lobby, he had ordered a confidential review of several departments throughout the company. Something had felt wrong. Profits were healthy. Clients were satisfied. Yet valuable employees kept leaving. Strong ideas disappeared. Credit often landed with the wrong people. Patterns like that rarely happened by chance. The investigation revealed something surprising. Emily Carter's name appeared again and again. A major client retention strategy had originated from her notes. A scheduling system that improved efficiency by nearly 20% had been her suggestion. An operational change that saved thousands of dollars each quarter could be traced directly back to her recommendations. Yet official records credited supervisors, directors, and senior managers. Ethan leaned back in his chair as he reviewed another report. The same story repeated itself. Emily contributed. Someone else received recognition. Emily solved problems. Others accepted praise. She never complained. She never demanded attention. She simply continued working. That quality interested Ethan more than any resume ever could. The following morning, Emily entered a strategy meeting expecting another difficult session. Several department leaders filled the room. Victoria sat near the head of the table. Her expression remained unreadable. A discussion began regarding a struggling client account worth millions of dollars annually. Executives debated possible solutions for nearly an hour. Nothing gained traction. Finally, Emily carefully shared an idea. The room became quiet. A few people exchanged glances. Before anyone could respond, Victoria moved the discussion in a different direction. The meeting continued. Emily lowered her eyes to her notes. She had become accustomed to being overlooked. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan entered the room. He listened to a summary of the discussion before asking a simple question. Did anyone propose a direct client restructuring plan? Silence followed. Emily felt her pulse quicken. Ethan looked around the table. Interesting, he said. Because I reviewed one this morning. His gaze shifted toward Emily. A very good one. Several heads turned immediately. Victoria's expression tightened for the briefest moment. Ethan continued. I recommend we explore that approach. For the first time, Emily realized he had been paying attention far longer than anyone understood. As the meeting ended, uncertainty spread across the room. People were beginning to notice the same thing Ethan had noticed months earlier. That discovery made some employees curious. It made others uncomfortable. And for Victoria Hayes, it marked the beginning of a much bigger problem. Success often attracts attention. Sometimes it attracts the wrong kind. After the strategy meeting, Emily noticed a shift throughout the company. People who had ignored her before suddenly wanted updates on her projects. Department managers invited her into discussions that previously happened behind closed doors. A few employees even apologized for doubting her promotion. On the surface, things seemed to be improving. Beneath that surface, something else was taking shape. It started with small inconsistencies. A report she submitted disappeared from a shared drive. A client email went unanswered because someone removed her from the distribution list. Meeting invitations arrived late or not at all. Each incident appeared harmless by itself. Together, they created a pattern Emily could not ignore. She tried solving the problems quietly. Complaining felt unprofessional. Besides, she had worked too hard to earn trust. She did not want anyone believing she could not handle pressure. One Friday afternoon, she discovered the most serious issue yet. A financial projection she had prepared for an important client presentation contained numbers she had never entered. Several figures were completely wrong. If presented to the client, the errors could damage the company's credibility. Emily immediately checked previous versions. Her original work had been accurate. Someone had changed the file afterward. Confused and alarmed, she spent hours reviewing activity logs. The edits appeared to come from her own account. That made no sense. Emily knew she had not made them. As she sat staring at her screen, a cold feeling settled over her. Whoever was responsible had been careful. Very careful. Across the building, Victoria Hayes reviewed information on her tablet. A faint smile touched her face. For weeks, she had watched Emily gain support from executives. Watched department leaders begin treating her as a legitimate contributor. Watched Ethan show increasing confidence in her abilities. Victoria disliked every minute of it. She believed advancement should follow established paths. Emily's rise disrupted those expectations. Worse, it threatened questions Victoria preferred nobody ask. Monday morning arrived with another surprise. Emily received an urgent request to attend a compliance review meeting. Her stomach tightened immediately. Compliance reviews rarely happen without a reason. The conference room felt unusually crowded when she entered. Representatives from finance, operations, and legal sat around the table. Victoria occupied a seat near the front. Ethan was absent. That detail worried Emily most. The meeting began with formal introductions. Then a folder was placed in front of her. She opened it slowly. Her heart dropped. Inside were documents showing unauthorized changes to financial records, connected to several projects. Every action appeared linked to her employee credentials. Emily looked up in disbelief. There has to be some mistake. Nobody responded right away. The silence felt heavier than any accusation. Victoria finally spoke. Her voice remained calm and professional. We are simply reviewing the facts. Emily stared at the pages. She recognized some of the projects. Others she had never touched. Yet somehow her name appeared throughout the file. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. She knew she was innocent. The evidence suggested otherwise. For the first time since her promotion, she felt completely alone. Then she noticed something even more troubling. The empty chair at the end of the table. The chair where Ethan Blackwell should have been sitting. Nothing hurts more than being judged by people who once believed in you. The compliance review lasted nearly 3 hours. By the time it ended, Emily felt emotionally drained. Every explanation she offered seemed weaker than the documents sitting on the table. The records showed unauthorized changes. The access logs pointed toward her account. The timeline appeared convincing. Even she had trouble understanding how someone could have manipulated everything so completely. When the meeting concluded, a temporary decision was announced. Until the investigation finished, Emily would be placed on administrative leave. The words echoed in her mind long after she left the room. Administrative leave sounded professional. To Emily, it felt like public humiliation. News spread quickly throughout Blackwell Global. Employees who had recently congratulated her now avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when she entered hallways. Some people looked sympathetic. Others seemed satisfied. Rumors evolved into assumptions. Assumptions became conclusions. By the end of the week, many employees acted as if the case had already been decided. Emily packed a small box from her office. Family photos, a notebook, a coffee mug her mother had given her years earlier. The walk through the building felt longer than ever. Every step reminded her how quickly success could disappear. She had worked tirelessly. She had followed every rule. None of it seemed to matter now. Outside, cold wind moved between the skyscrapers. Emily sat on a bench across the street and stared at the company headquarters. Tears threatened to form, but she fought them back. She refused to cry in front of the building that had once represented her future. Days passed, then a week. The silence became unbearable. No calls from colleagues. No updates from management. Most painful of all, no message from Ethan Blackwell. Emily replayed every conversation they had shared. Every moment when he appeared to trust her. She had expected him to defend her, to ask questions, to at least hear her side of the story. Instead, he remained absent. The disappointment cut deeper than the accusations themselves. One evening, Emily sat at her kitchen table reviewing copies of old project files. Sleep had become difficult. Her apartment felt smaller than ever. Bills continued arriving. Doubt crept into her thoughts. What if she never cleared her name? What if this followed her forever? Her phone suddenly vibrated. An unknown number appeared on the screen. Emily hesitated before answering. Hello. A familiar voice responded. Ms. Carter. She immediately recognized Ethan. Her heart skipped. Mr. Blackwell. Silence followed for a brief moment. I understand you may be angry with me, he said. Emily looked out the window. City lights reflected across the glass. I do not understand what happened, she admitted quietly. Ethan's voice remained calm. I know. Another pause. Then why did you not stop this? The question escaped before she could stop herself. Ethan did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his words were careful. Because sometimes the truth only appears when people believe they have already won. Emily frowned. The statement made little sense. Before she could ask another question, Ethan continued. Trust me a little longer. Then the call ended. Emily lowered the phone slowly. Confusion mixed with frustration. She wanted answers. Instead, she had received another mystery. What she did not know was that while she sat alone questioning everything, a much larger plan was already moving toward its final stage. 3 days after Ethan's mysterious phone call, Emily received an email marked confidential. The message contained only a time, a location, and a request for her attendance. No explanation. No details. Under normal circumstances, she might have ignored it. After everything that had happened, curiosity outweighed caution. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning at Blackwell Global Headquarters. Returning to the building felt surreal. Employees moved through the lobby exactly as they always had. Yet for Emily, everything had changed. Some people noticed her arrival. A few whispered. Others quickly looked away. She kept walking. An assistant escorted her directly to the executive boardroom on the top floor. Through the glass walls, she could see members of the board already seated around a massive table. Senior executives filled the remaining chairs. Victoria Hayes sat confidently near the center of the room. She appeared completely relaxed. That confidence caught Emily's attention immediately. People rarely looked that comfortable unless they believed the outcome was already decided. Ethan entered moments later. The conversation stopped. He greeted the board, took his seat, then opened a folder thicker than any document Emily had seen before. The room settled into silence. "Thank you all for attending," Ethan began. His voice was calm, steady, impossible to read. "Today we will conclude an internal investigation that has been ongoing for several months." Several executives exchanged confused looks. Months. Most of them believed the investigation started with Emily. Ethan continued. Recent events led many employees to focus on the wrong person. Victoria's expression shifted slightly. It was subtle, almost invisible. Emily noticed it anyway. Ethan pressed a button on a remote control. A presentation appeared on the large screen behind him. The first slide displayed a timeline stretching back nearly a year. The second contained communication records. The third showed authorization logs from multiple departments. Piece by piece, a larger picture emerged. The room grew quieter with each slide. Ethan explained how project credits had been reassigned. Repeatedly, performance data had been altered. Financial records had been manipulated to favor certain executives. None of it pointed toward Emily. Every path led somewhere else. For the first time, uncertainty appeared on Victoria's face. Ethan advanced to another slide. Then another. Internal messages appeared. Approval chains. Hidden transfers of responsibility. Carefully documented evidence gathered over many months. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Several board members leaned forward. Others stared in disbelief. Emily barely breathed. Suddenly she understood why Ethan had remained silent. Why he had allowed the accusations to continue. Why he never publicly defended her. He had been building something much larger than a simple defense. He had been exposing an entire network of deception. Ethan finally turned toward Victoria. "Would you like to explain these records?" The question hung in the room. No one moved. No one spoke. Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since Emily had met her, she seemed completely unprepared. The confidence was gone. Board members began reviewing documents distributed moments earlier. Expressions changed rapidly. Surprise, concern, realization. Ethan remained composed throughout. When the final file was displayed, the room reached a unanimous conclusion. The truth had finally surfaced. Emily felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly overwhelmed her. Her name had been cleared. Yet as the meeting moved toward its conclusion, Ethan revealed one final decision. A decision that would change both her future and the future of the entire company. The boardroom remained silent long after the evidence had been presented. Nobody rushed to speak. Nobody challenged the conclusion. Months of carefully collected records had revealed the truth with undeniable clarity. Emily sat motionless, still trying to absorb what had happened. For weeks, she had questioned herself. For weeks, she had wondered whether her career was over. Now, in a matter of minutes, everything had changed. Ethan stood at the head of the table and looked around the room. "This company was built on accountability," he said. "When that principle is ignored, every employee pays the price." Several board members nodded in agreement. The atmosphere felt completely different from the tension that had filled the room earlier. The uncertainty was gone. The facts had settled it. Ethan then turned toward Emily. "There is one more matter we need to address." Her heart immediately began racing again. She had expected her name to be cleared. She had not expected to become the focus of attention. Ethan picked up a document and walked toward her. "Months ago, before any of these recent events unfolded, I reviewed dozens of internal reports." He paused briefly. One name appeared repeatedly. Emily lowered her eyes. She knew exactly whose name he meant. Ethan continued. "Again and again, I found examples of initiative, problem-solving, integrity, and leadership." The room listened carefully. Those qualities cannot be manufactured. They cannot be assigned by title. They are earned through actions. He handed the document to Emily. Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted it. She looked down. The title printed across the top immediately stole her breath. It was a new promotion. a significantly larger role than the one she had previously received. Gasps spread quietly around the room. Emily stared at the page, convinced she had misread it. "Mr. Blackwell," she began. Ethan smiled. This time it was a genuine smile. "You earned it." Emotion tightened her throat. For a moment, she could not find the words. The journey that had brought her here flashed through her mind. The tiny apartment, the long hours, the overlooked ideas, the accusations, the loneliness. Every difficult moment suddenly felt connected to this one. Several weeks later, Emily settled into her new position. The transition was challenging, but for the first time, she felt truly seen. Employees who once doubted her now respected her work. Teams sought her advice. Projects flourished under her leadership. One evening, as the office slowly emptied, she found herself standing in the lobby where everything had begun. The memory made her laugh softly. Ethan happened to be walking toward the exit when he noticed her. "Something funny?" he asked. Emily glanced at the polished floor. "I was just thinking about the worst morning of my life." Ethan smiled knowingly. "Interesting. Why?" she asked. "Because it may have been one of the best mornings for this company." Emily laughed. The tension that once existed between them had long disappeared. They stood quietly for a moment, watching the city lights glow beyond the glass entrance. Finally, Ethan looked at her and said something she would never forget. "The coffee never mattered." Emily raised an eyebrow. Ethan's expression softened. "What mattered was what you did afterward." And for the first time, she fully understood. Character had opened the door. Courage had carried her through it. Everything else had simply followed.